Hello and welcome once again to our countdown to Christmas. It's now the 17th of December, so only a week left until Christmas Day, so I hope you're all ready and enjoying the festive season. So as always, it's what would you pick, and you're either Team Necrons or Team Space Marines. Now currently the scores are 9-7 in favour of Team Necrons, and we've got a very hotly contested matchup today, which was quite highly recommended within our comments section. So we've got the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer going up against the Marine Eradicator. Now in terms of their points, they're slightly different. There's 180 points will get you 3 Lokhust Heavy Destroyers, whereas 180 points will actually get you 4 Marine Eradicators, because they're only 45 points as opposed to 60 points per model. But there are some upgrade options if you wanted to use those. But for this video I'm going to be putting 4 of them on because it is quite important, because each one of the weapons that these models take can be quite devastating. So I'm sure you guys know how this works now. Let's get on to the first topic, which of course is the stats. Who's got the best stats? And this one's a pretty easy one. The 8-inch movement on the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer, as well as the additional wound, is an easy winner there. Leadership is also there as well, but it's not as needed for these kind of minimal units. Now as for the abilities, of course the Lokhust Destroyer's got the Living Metal ability to regain a lost wound, which isn't too bad because he's got 4 wounds and he's not likely going to be reanimated with the reanimation protocols, which is one of his other abilities in fact. And then of course command protocols as well, if he's within 6 inches of a character model, which he now may be because of the fact that he's got the core keyword. He's then got the Hardwire for Destruction ability, so they're able to reroll hit rolls of a 1, very nice, and then the Repulsor platform, so that he can fire heavy weapons without incurring any penalties to his hit rolls, which is very valuable because of course, as we've just mentioned in the stats, he's got an 8-inch movement. Now the Marine Eradicators have got Angels of Death, so the combat doctrines are going to be the one that stands out there, although the AP is already quite high on these kind of weapons. They've then got the combat squads, so you can divide them up into 2 units of 3, that's if you're taking a 6-man unit there, and you can choose to do that on deployment. And then the main ability here, which is an absolute mammoth of an ability, which is the Total Obliteration ability. So in the shooting phase, when these guys target an enemy unit, they can fire their weapons twice instead of the once, as long as they're firing them at that same targeted unit. So for me this one's a close one, I can't really call it, so I'm going to sit on the fence and give them both the point. Being able to move and fire heavy weapons I think is a massive ability, especially when you're re-rolling ones, but that Total Obliteration alone is pretty decent, so I'm going to give them both the point there. Now in terms of the damage output, the Gauss Destructors are the weapons you should be taking. If you're taking the Exterminator weapons on these guys, you're doing it wrong in my opinion. Those weapons are absolute trash. You want to be taking the Gauss Destructors every time, which are 36-inch range, heavy 1, strength 10, -4 AP, and the damage is 3d3, which is an average of course of 6 damage with a potential of 9 there. Now with the 3 models that we mentioned, with 3 shots, you're likely going to be getting 2 wounds against toughness 5 or less, which is averaging 11.6 damage. And if you're going up against toughness 6 or more, you're averaging 1.5 wounds, which approximately is 9.3 damage. This is all pre-armor save though, so take the damage with a pinch of salt, because of course it's got to get through armor and invuln saves before that even happens. Now with the Eradicators, you've got 4 models as mentioned for 180 points, so that's 4 shots with the Melter Rifles, 24-inch range, strength 8, -4 AP, and the damage is d6, or d6 plus 2 if you're firing within 12-inch range. So you're going to get 2.2 wounds on average against toughness 4 or less, which is either going to be 7.8 or 12.2 damage depending on how close you are. Again, if you're within 12-inch range, you're going to get d6 plus 2 damage. And if you're going against toughness 5, toughness 6 or toughness 7, it's going to be 1.7 wounds, which is 6.2 damage on average, or 9.8 within 12 inches. Now you may have noticed there we didn't do toughness 6 or more with the Eradicators because they're only strength 8 as opposed to strength 10, so their figures are going to be slightly less anyway. They've then got some options as well, which is the Heavy Melter Rifle, so all models can take those, and for every 3 models you can get a multi-melter in there as well. But the main thing to remember here is that ability we spoke about already, the Total Obliteration ability. So all those stats and figures that we just mentioned, for example going up against toughness 7, you could potentially get 9.8 damage within 12-inch range. You've got to double that because you're going to be firing twice with all your weapons. So that's why for me the Marine Eradicators are going to be winning that point. Now just a little side note here, that the best way to use these guys is by putting them in strategic reserves, because even though they've got the best damage output, they've only got 24-inch range, so you're not going to be able to fire them straight away if your opponent is deployed correctly, and you may actually get targeted in turn 1. So the best way of using these guys and getting all that damage output out is by putting them in strategic reserves. That's just my penny's worth there. So on to the synergy. The Lokhust Heavy Destroyers of course have got the Technomancers, which are now a massive unit because they're bringing back core models with their rights of reanimation ability, and that includes Lokhust Heavy Destroyers, which have now got the core keyword. So you can be bringing back 60 points worth of models every single battle round, and with that Canoptic Cloak they can even be healing them. You've then got some synergy with the Royal Warden because of his adaptive strategy ability, again working on core units. So if your Lokhust Heavy Destroyers do get caught in combat, of course they're not going to be able to fire, However, your Royal Warden will get them out of trouble to allow them to still fire. Then you've got your Overlord models. It could be your Overlord, it could be the named characters, or your Command Barge. They've all got the My Will Be Done ability. So core units within 9 inches are going to add 1 to their hit roll. So now they'll be hitting on 2s as well as re-rolling 1s. Then the final bit of unit synergy is the Scorpion Lord or the Locust Lord. Because they've got the United in Destruction aura, so Dynasty Destroyer cult units within 6 inches get to re-roll wound rolls of a 1. So with that strength 10 weapon, 1s are your worst enemy, but being able to re-roll them is pretty handy. In terms of the dynasties for the Locust Heavy Destroyers, there's 2 that I quite like the look of. The Mephit Dynasty to add 3 inches to the range and get the extra AP, or the Zerakan Dynasty for that 5+ feel no pain save against mortal wounds. But the main reason though is to be able to re-roll one of your wound rolls every single phase for every single unit. So again, 1s are going to be your worst enemy on that wound roll. Being able to re-roll that 1 with your strength 10 weapon is going to be massive. If you're looking at the custom codes, there's a couple in particular here which do come from the same list, so you can't pick both of them together. But the Superior Artisans, again, to be able to re-roll a single wound roll, or the Immovable Phalanx. For infantry units that didn't move, they're going to get a +1 to their armor saving throw, so they're going to have a 2+ armor save. Then finally, you got the stratagem, which is Extermination Protocols for 2 command points, which allows them to re-roll all the wound rolls for the whole unit. Now, it's probably better served on a max unit, but if you're firing against a vehicle that doesn't have an in-run save, you definitely want to be using this one just to guarantee that that thing's going to be destroyed, because every wound averages 6 damage, as mentioned earlier in the video. In terms of the Eradicator synergy, well, you've got the captains, of course, with the Rights of Battle aura, so they're going to be able to re-roll hit rolls of a 1. You've got the Apothecaries, which can use the combat restoratives to heal D3 lost wounds, as well as the Narthesium aura to give a 6+ feel no pain save. And don't forget, they've got the combat revival stratagem to bring a model back each and every turn, very similar to a Technomancer, except it costs command points, unless of course you've got a Chief Apothecary, but that's more expense. If you want to get an in-run save on these guys, you get a Librarian with the Psychic Fortress, pretty standard. Or if you want to boost their range capability, you bring a Chaplain, and with the Litanies, you've got the Catacombs on Fire to add 1 to the wound roll, which you probably don't need unless it's a high toughness target, and then the Recitation of Focus to be able to add 1 to the hits rolls. In terms of the synergy with the chapters, there's 5 that I've marked here that I would probably use with the Eradicators, although they would really go with any kind of chapter, but these are the 5 which will work really well with the Eradicators. So you've got the Dark Angels, so if they remain stationary, they get a +1 to hit. You've got the Black Templars with their new Templar Vows to get that 5+ invulnerable save. You've got Salamanders, which have got all sorts of synergy with stratagems for melter weapons in particular, as well as that reroll to the wound roll. Ultramarines can fall back and still fire, and White Scars could advance and still fire assault weapons without any penalty. And of course their melter rifles are all assault weapons there. Then to cap the synergy off, I want to talk about some of the stratagems available to the Eradicators. The first 2, which are steady advance, so you can do your normal move, but you'll be considered to have not actually moved and remained stationary for 2 command points. So that's going to work if you've got the heavy weapons within the unit, such as the heavy melter rifle or the multi-melter. Both of those are heavy weapons. And of course Auspex Scan, which is very good against deep strike units, especially the tanky ones. Then the 2 resilient kind of stratagems. Transhuman Physiology, everybody's favourite, so you can't wound the models unless in a 4+. Then unyielding in the face of the foe for a command point with MK Gravis armor, which they have. You're going to +1 to your armor save to give them a 2+ armor. So I'm going to be giving the points to both of these units. Again, I'm sitting on the fence here. They've got so much synergy with all sorts of things within their codex, so they're both getting a point here. And finally, we're on to the resiliency. Now, we've already spoke about the Transhuman Physiology and the unyielding in the face of the foe stratagems, which are very good for an Eradicator unit. And we've already mentioned in the stat line at the start of the video how many wounds the models have. We didn't actually mention that there's 12 wounds in each of the units when you take into consideration that there's going to be 4 Eradicators for 180 points, so that would be 12 wounds to match the 12 wounds for the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Both of them are toughness 5, and both of them have got a 3+ armor save, but the one thing that breaks them apart for me is the fact that the Locust Heavy Destroyers have got the fly keyword as well as an 8-inch movement. So they can get themselves out of trouble where needed, so they can be sitting on top of terrain features or fly off into another area of the board. 8 inches, you're not likely going to be getting caught, whereas those Eradicators are only moving at 5-inch range, so they're very easily going to be getting tagged against melee enemy units. So for me, that point has to go to the Locust Heavy Destroyers. So that's the end of the topics. For me, I've scored this 4 points to 3 in favour of the Locust Heavy Destroyers. A very close contest here. They just had a few things that let them down, but you got to remember that they're less points. They're only 45 points a model, so they've done pretty well there. So that puts the total score so far 10-7 in favour of Team Necrons. Bring on tomorrow's video. Guys, thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and as always, I will see you tomorrow.